You're listening to Parasearch Radio. News, views and reviews from the world of the paranormal from across the UK and beyond. Find us on Facebook, Twitter and the World Wide Web. The views and opinions expressed by presenters and guests are their own and do not necessarily reflect the official policy or position of Parasearch Radio or their affiliates and sponsors. Listener discretion is advised.
Good evening and welcome to the Paranormal Pop-Up Show. My name is Kerry Greenaway and tonight I'm joined in the studio by Haunted History's host, Penny G. Morgan. Good evening, Penny. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. I'm very good. And we're also joined in the studio by Haunted Magazine people. I don't even know how to say this. Mr. Paul Stevenson is here. Good evening, Mr. Paul Stevenson.
Hello.
And Mr. Andy Saw is with us as well. Good evening, Andy. How are you?
I'm very good, thank you. Yourself?
Yeah, I'm really well. Well, you had a big event on Saturday, I hear.
We did, yes. It was the sort of like a VIP book launch of a special seminal book called All About Ghosts, published by Usborne back in the late 70s. That's been reprinted and republished. Not modernised for the millennials, but just as it was back in the day. And it was a great evening. Lots of brilliant guests and speakers. Also got to see a film about Borley Rectory. And it was a very good night. And Penny and obviously Andy was there, and I'm sure they'll say the same.
Okay, I bled out of a stone tonight, guys. Right, so I want to go back to the beginning of this. I want to know why you first started pushing for the relaunch of this book, because it was 1977 when this first was published. It sold phenomenally at the time, went out of print, but you've pushed to get it reprinted or relaunched, haven't you? So it's accessible to a new generation of people that are in, or kids, I would say, because it's actually more a kids' book, isn't it?
It is a kid's book. I mean, we can't take the credit for getting it printed out. That's down to Usborne. But when we first found out that Usborne, there was a petition to get it back in print, we said to Usborne that if this is successful, we'd love to do something other than just promote it on Twitter or give a book away in the magazine, something like that. So we came up with the idea of a VIP launch with people who were involved in the book in the 70s and also people who loved it as a kid but are now still doing paranormal things, like myself, like Andy, like Reece Shearsmith, like people who write books about ghosts, who had this book as a kid in the late 70s, early 80s, as I did. So.
Mm-hmm. That actually brings me to an integral point, because when we talk about, a lot of people when they say they first get into the paranormal talk about a personal experience they had. But for some people, it actually is something like a book they've read. For me, it was a Penguin book of, ghost stories and stuff, and Borley Rectory was in that too. But for you guys, it was this one, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was for me. Definitely, I got this book when I was 8, and it just thrilled me. Ghosts. How to spot a ghost and the haunted houses, and it just drew me in, and I was hooked ever since then. And then Usborne released a few more a couple of years later, and the Borley Rectory one was in that, Harry Price was in that, and I was hooked even more. So when we find out that it was coming back, I said to Andy, we're going to do something. Andy agreed. Andy also designed the cover for the issue 24 to match the original look of the book, which we said we needed to do.
Very much.
I mean,
so.
You're very fortunate. You actually got hold of a copy and kept it, because for me, it was a case of going to the school library and hoping that it was there, because more often than not, it was taken, and that was the last you saw of it. So if you saw it for a couple of days, you were very, very lucky.
Yeah, sorry, Penny. I mean, Penny will vouch for what was said on Thursday by a publicist, that in the 70s and 80s, school libraries got tons of books sent by Usborne and others like, and now sadly they don't. But this book was in the library, taken out, and people were there was a waiting list for it.
Yeah, but that was one of the resounding sort of things you got, especially from the panel, when the 4 people who were on the panel There was Ed Parnell, who's a writer who actually lives about 3 miles away from my parents, we discovered. Then you had Chris Maynard, who was the original author, an amazing Canadian. Ashley Thorpe. It's Thorpe, isn't it? Ash's surname. Yeah. He was the director of Borley, and then you had Anna Howarth, who was Usborne publisher. And the main thing you were getting from people like Ashley was that, and he said that Rhys Shearsmith said the same thing, and apparently Lawrence Rickard, who was in BBC Ghosts, said the same thing, that literally that was the place they got it from. The minute you saw it on the shelf in the school library, you'd like to stalk the library for when it came back. But they designed runs for schools, so they did specific bindings for the schools to make them hardy. And they said at the time, I think it was something like a third of the books that Usborne sold were sold to schools.
Yeah.
Which, wouldn't that be amazing if that was the case now?
It would be amazing.
It'd be terrific.
Yeah.
Why do you think that is? Why do you think then that this book and books like it had such a pull to that age range? Because, like as I say, for me, mine was same sort of age range, in school, although it wasn't this book, it was a different book, it was that pull, it was that... What do you think that is then, guys? I know what it is for me, but what is it?
I know my theory on it, but I'll leave you boys first.
Yeah, I mean, for me, was it as a kid, your imagination runs wild, and you whatever you gets fed into, you tend to believe, and I was just hooked by the fact that this was a subject that the paranormal meant nothing to me, but I was reading it as if it was being taught to me. And as I was a kid, I could understand what they were saying. The things about I've spotted a ghost and the village of Pluckley, the haunted village down in Kent, and it resonated. It was written for kids, obviously, but it just stuck. And I always say Haunted Magazine has a little bit of DNA from that Usborne book in it, because when we started the magazine, we wanted it to be read properly, to have nice little funky taglines so people were sucked into the feature, and it's just stuck with me for the last 42 years. To be fair,
I mean, I think for me it was even simpler than that. It was just the look. Number one, you got this big ghosts on the front cover, big bold ghosts. Now you're interested. The graphics or the actual artwork, you can see it's so lovingly put together, and so. For a child, really deliciously creepy, and that you got Scooby-Doo on the telly that you used to watch, and this book had that kind of ghosts, and you could read about it. So you grabbed hold of this, and then you got through each page, and it was like a new story on every page. And to me, just that's what it did. The whole imagination in that artwork, and then piece by piece learning to read with it. To be honest with you, at that sort of time, that's what caught my attention, really.
And the fact is, I mean, did you post a picture, Penny, of your son reading it?
I did, yeah.
Yeah, my kids love it too. So it just shows you that it's not aged. That style of writing is still loved by kids.
I think the reason it was so popular, and they do think it was more popular with boys and girls. That was one of the things that Anna said. They haven't got the proof of that, but the feedback they get, there's more young boys were reading it in the 70s and 80s than girls. And I know Chris Maynard, who was saying that was kind of the hope, because they were saying it's very hard to get boys to read. I mean, I've got sons. Kerry, would you say it's hard to get boys to read?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. So they thought, well, a book like this that's kind of a bit naughty, you're not really supposed to read about ghosts, are you? You're supposed to, read Tom Sawyer or whatever. But they designed it so that it would appeal to people who may be reading a lengthy novel or a pure sort of non-fiction book would appeal to them. And one of the and I hate to say it, I'm old enough to know what they were talking about. The way that they put the pictures together, they put them with rounded corners, so it looked like an old television screen. Mm-hmm. So the kid would think they're looking at a television screen, and then they would have, and they were saying it doesn't matter what you read as long as you read. And if this gets a young boy, to be honest, involved in it, then it's great. They're still reading. Does it really matter that they're not reading classic literature? And it was kind of the whole. It was fascinating to hear them talk about the logic behind how it was set out. and the fact they wanted to make sure that it almost looked like almost like a copy of the Dandy or the Beano or something like that. So it would draw people in who maybe weren't. I mean, it would draw in the avid readers who thought, "Oh, that looks interesting," but it was also draw in those who were a bit sort of, "I haven't got time to read. Who wants to read? It's boring." And that's what I think the pull was, and I do think it is slightly because it was a little bit naughty. It was kind of not the sort of thing you're supposed to read about. And let's face it, I mean, you tell a 10-year-old kid not to do something, they're going to do that. So if you put a book up that's about something they shouldn't really be reading about, or maybe is a bit naughty, or maybe is going to scare them a little bit, they're going to jump on that with both feet. And I think that's what was genius about doing the whole series that they did, to be quite honest. It was getting people to read who possibly wouldn't have read otherwise, because it was something that it wasn't your standard book fare.
No, I totally agree with you there. I think it is the scare factor, and yeah, it is. It's that creep factor, isn't it? It's that anything that can link or capture the imagination for children to start reading, and these topics do capture that imagination, particularly in children, and I do think that is integral to it. Now, how this originally came about was Ashley Thorpe, as you've mentioned, has done an absolutely amazing animated feature film regarding Borley Rectory. Now, he'd called Usborne Books directly to see if he could have an interview with the author of The World of the Unknown Ghosts, Christopher Maynard, who you've mentioned, Penny. Right, now, they actually put him through to Usborne's Anna Howarth, right, who works at Usborne's, obviously, and she had a petition. She started the petition to get this in reprint. Now, she exceeded 1,000 signatures, and then they decided to get this out for Halloween. So this is how it all ties together, everybody. And then, obviously, the guys from Haunted Magazine then got involved as well and did the event. And what an amazing way of bringing several different areas of the field under one banner. I just think that's great, how everybody was not connected and are now connected because of just one little book.
Yeah, I mean, there's a massive, tweet loving now on Twitter, because we're all tweeting each other and we're all sort of following each other. But that was the idea, because the paranormal, although it's wide and varied, literature tends to sometimes be the other side of the paranormal. So we brought them in, and we said to Usborne, let's do this event. You invite your guests, we'll invite our guests, and together we'll just have a damn good time, and we'll celebrate this book. We'll pay homage to this book, and that's what we did. And the people like Ed and Ash and Mark and Jake from Nucleus Films, it was like they love the book as much as us, and they are doing a different niche of the paranormal, but they still love the book, and it's what brought us all together. Kieran O'Keefe, Phil Wyman, they're the same. They love the book, and it's just great to see people from different strands of the paranormal world together, some we've never met before in our lives, really just becoming good friends and enjoying the celebration.
I totally agree with that. Now, I'm going to go on to the Borley Rectory thing in a bit, because I want to focus on the book to start with, really. So they did other books as well. They did, if I believe right, they did one on ufology, and did they do one on monsters, I believe, as well?
Haunted houses as well. And they packaged 3 together, and they called it the Usborne Guide to Supernatural World, and it was like a thick book, A5 size, and it encompassed 3 volumes of those like you've mentioned. But yeah, that was, I think it was 2 years later, I think they said.
Yeah, 79.
79. And again, I had that book as well, and I've still got it. But that's what my interest in the paranormal started from. What was interesting, though, was when, I don't know if you remember, Penny Andy, when Anna said that she tried to get their bosses to publish it, and they weren't interested at first. And she said, they said it might not sell, but apparently it's done a lot better than Anna thought. A lot better
on the 4th run now or something. Yeah. It's on the 4th print run. But wasn't it also to do with the fact that Finland had petitioned?
That was crazy, wasn't it?
This is a great story. The fact that Finland had petitioned to have it brought back first, I believe, wasn't it?
Yeah, last year, wasn't it? Last year,
yeah. And so they'd resold it to the Finnish publishers so that they could reproduce it. And I mean, I can't quite remember the figures she said, but Finland hasn't got many people who live there, and it's sold thousands of copies in the first 12 months since it came back. And Ash was telling a story about he was doing a kind of a launch type thing I think it was for the Borley film, wasn't it, out there?
Yeah.
And he mentioned that he got the inspiration for Borley from reading, World of the Unknown Ghosts, and he said this whole murmur went through the audience of sort of like appreciation, and it was almost like, the book I'm talking about, and they were like, yeah, and it was so a sort of a little country like Finland, just lapped the fact it was being relaunched up, and apparently the Finnish sort of liaison publisher, she's quite sort of stoic and not prone to emotion, I think was what Anna was saying, and she was telling the figures, and they were like, no, I don't mean. She's like, I would not lie, these are the figures. And so it's definitely wanted, if nothing else.
It most certainly is. Do you think they're going to then go on and republish the other books?
Well, they'd be daft not to be fair.
I agree.
But we have the apostrophe question.
Yeah.
Question.
Yeah, obviously the book on UFO, it's UFO apostrophe S, which may have been all right in the 1979, but the grammar police would probably in 2019-20 might have a problem. But
I think the editors are refusing to leave their offices unless it gets changed, something along those lines. Yeah.
Well, no, it needs to be. I mean, Anna tried it; it was successful, and I think. Hopefully plans are in place to do it. I can't see why they wouldn't do it now, to be honest.
No, strike while the iron is hot.
Oh, I totally agree with that. I think it would be remiss of them, shall we say, to not do that. Now, you mentioned, Penny, that Ashley Thorpe, this was one of the first inspirations he had for the Borley film. Now, when I interviewed Ashley Thorpe, when he first released the film, he was just doing the festival circuit with the film itself, and I actually saw the trailer for that when I was at the book launch of The Enigma of Rosalie. What an amazing achievement Ashley Thorpe has done with that. Now, an inspiration can come from many, many places, can't it? And I think this demonstrates exactly the level of a deep-set inspiration for a future project. I mean, you've got to remember Ashley Thorpe, that's probably been, 20-odd years in his head in the making for him. Absolutely phenomenal, guys. If you've not seen that, you need to. We're going to go on to that in a minute. So I want to talk to Andy, because, Andy, you're very visual. You do a lot of the work for Haunted Magazine, don't you, in regard to the graphics and everything else. Where do you find your inspiration for those, the graphic images that you produce?
Well, generally... sometimes they'll be suggested by Paul. You'll send some images over that try and riff off these, but more often than not, it's reading the article and then seeing what kind of works to it. And I have been known to spend 4 or 5 hours designing something and just not felt happy at all. And then in sort of 10 minutes scrapping it, starting again, it comes. I mean, if you take in the last sort of magazine that we've had, it because I was able to riff off ghosts. It was quite a different discipline to make a magazine feel a little bit retro, but also current at the same time. I'm not an out and out. I don't get a pencil out and start drawing. I'm what's called a more of a digital alchemist. So I take inspiration from existing pictures and put them all together, and then work around the words. And I think hopefully in the last few editions you'll notice that the words are the most important thing, but if we can make people sort of get through that doorway to read those words, which is where my job comes in, then that's what I do. I want things to be spooky without being out and out horror, if you like, because we found out early on that horror and the paranormal are two very, very different mediums. And for fans, they don't necessarily mix in print. So we kind of discovered early on, if we're going to go paranormal, we stay paranormal. So we want spooky images rather than out-and-out gore.
Which is exactly what this book does. Like you said yourself, it's the graphics that capture you, because they're not horror, are they? They are distinctly ghosty. And even the images of the dog, you know, the one-eyed dog that's in there, it's not horror. It is scary, but not horrifically scary.
It's cartoonesque. It's cartoonesque enough to be scary, but not too scary as to be nightmare-inducing. Does that make sense? Right.
And it is very important sometimes for that imagery to capture you, to make you read the words. And that's actually important.
Well, again, at this time, you'd not really got kids that were going on to their PlayStations or anything like that. This was comics. So you've got things like the Beano, the Dandy, and all that kind of stuff. And then this, which takes you into a totally different place, just much more visually exciting, much more interesting. And you're going to pick it up straight away and start reading. It's just a fabulous thing. And also at this sort of time, you've got to remember there was also like the top trumps that came in of all the sort of vampires and all that kind of thing. You've got the Dracula lollipops. You've got Hammer Horror on 9 o'clock on ITV. And
you're really showing your age now, Andy.
That's before my time. This is.
I saw them all on reruns, you know.
Oh, right. Okay.
But it was all, it was such a great time to be growing up in this kind of culture. Yeah, and this book is just the epitome of it.
But you mentioned about that image, and it's funny you picked up on the dog image, Kerry,
sure.
Because that was the first image that Will saw the other day when he looked at it, and he showed me, and he went, "Mum, what's this?" And I went, "Read it and find out." Yeah. And it's that's what I'm saying. It's funny that it worked because he saw the image and it sort of literally jumped out the page at him. And he's like, "What the hell's? What's this? What?" I went, "Read it. Read and find out. If that's the only bit you read and find out what that is." So it as you say, it's about it. Imagery can be can pull in the people who maybe wanting to read the words firstly don't, and vice versa.
And this is something
I always think you can have the best feature written by somebody, the best worded feature on paranormal, but if people don't want to read it and the images aren't there or the taglines aren't there, they'll probably flick it by and miss out on so much. What Andy does is make the features come to life by making it exciting, making that's a good tagline, that's a good image, we'll read this, and then they are sucked into the feature.
Exactly, and this is exactly what Haunted Magazine do on a regular basis. The words as well as the imagery, which these guys put out month after month for you guys to read. It's an extension from a book like this that's, given the inspiration there for you guys to go on to do what you do now, isn't it?
Yeah, it's an absolute passion. I mean, we do all of this out of passion, really. If we have something that's a really good, strong article, then we'd be doing an injustice by not designing it as such. But more importantly, it's not about you to look at my pictures. It's to really that picture makes me want to read this article, and I read this article and I come away from it and I've enjoyed that. And that's the whole experience that we want from Haunted Magazine.
I totally agree with you. I totally agree with that. And I think, and I'm going to fangirl a little bit here, you do it. Well done, guys, because it is a fantastic achievement every single time you release a magazine. Really do think it's a piece of work of art, not just the writing that goes into it, but the whole thing. It's just brilliant, and it ticks all the boxes for me. As a paranormal researcher, interest, just a general interest in the paranormal. It does what magazines back in the day used to do, and a lot of those went out of print. But you guys have really brought that back to us and are bringing us things like this event that you put on. I don't think anybody else could have done it quite like you guys did.
Well, it's something that obviously we run a ghost hunts at Bosworth 3 or 4 times a year. We do smaller events at Alton Antiques. This was something new to us as well. It wasn't the case of we've done this before, we can do it easy. A lot of planning, a lot of prep, and even then you're left in the hands of the gods as if something might go wrong. But we knew that when Anna started the petition, we knew that we had to do something, and it worked out. It was a great night. I said to Ruth, who was the marketing lady at Bosworth, if you could give us some haunted rooms as well, that would be some of the less haunted rooms. That would be even better. And lo and behold, we've got some of the haunted rooms for the guests who stayed over.
Before we get into that bit, Penny, tell us a little bit of the history of Bosworth.
Oh, blimey. Okay, yes.
Sorry, have I caught you on the hop there?
You have caught me on the hop. I was just sitting here listening.
I assumed that you would just be able to rattle it off, no problem.
I've just been talking Coombe Abbey. I've got Coombe Abbey running around in my head a bit too much at the moment. I was swatting up on the ghost book. Well, I mean, Bosworth is it. Correct me if I'm wrong, boys, but it was built in the sort of late 1500s. Early 1600s. The same family did own it for quite a long while, and one of the things it's most famous for, and I can't for the life of me remember his name, was one of the Dixies was a bit of a tyrant, and he didn't like the fact that his daughter was seeing a farmhand or the son of a local farmer, and he set a bear trap in the woods to capture him. She found out, went running into the woods to warn him, and got caught in the bear trap herself and consequently died. But I don't think he actually lost any sleep over it, if I'm right. Am I, boys?
No, that was Walston Dixie, I believe. Yeah, you're right. Yes, yeah.
Yeah. I also know that it then became a hospital in, I think it was 1936, off the top of my head, and this is off the top of my head because I haven't got the notes in front of me right now. And yeah, it stayed as a hospital and a maternity hospital for quite a long time. But it was also the site of something that's known as the Battle of Bosworth, where it's the same chap whose daughter died. He had an out-and-out fist fight with another landowner because he didn't like them coming across his land. So it's been a stately home. It's not one of those that was an abbey that was converted and all that kind of thing, but it's been a stately home. And then, say, in 1936, it was a hospital. And during World War II, it was a military hospital. I think it's the RAMC, I want to say off the top of my head, that was based there. But I do remember one of the things when we did the show on it, Paul, I told you about the 3 matrons who covered it. I think it was 2 Mabels and another one. And you mentioned you'd got all those names through.
Yeah, I'm fairly sure Mabel came up on Alice a few times. And, you know, in some of the rooms that were the wards, some of the mediums who have come on our events have picked up matron and nurses and patients without them knowing that it was a hospital back in the day. So, yeah. But the thing about it, I mean, you bang on with the history, Penny, but the thing about it is because it's now a living, breathing, working hotel, the decor is just amazing.
The old part, yeah.
Yeah, the pictures are still there, the statues are still there, the staircase is still there, it's just...
The fireplace.
Yes, it's just,
the wood panelling. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Another thing I've just remembered, in the cellar area, there were cell doors from the old Newgate prison.
Yes.
That the then owner had commandeered. I think he was part of the group renovating the prison or something, wasn't he? He was a contractor or something along those lines. He had actually brought the doors in, and I didn't get to see them, unfortunately, but they're still there, I believe.
Yeah, there's two doors, Andy. Is that right, Andy?
That's correct.
One's in the Newgate bar, and one's down in the cellar. I think they're from I think it's Tollemache.
Yes, it was. That's the name.
Was a contractor or something, and he bought the house after the gambling debt from
ABCD
Dixie, ABC, and
it's all coming back to me now. Thank you.
Yeah, and, the doors are there obviously because he had some connection with Newgate Prison. But just how many hotels, how many halls have got a prison door, in their setup? Not many.
Exactly. No. But yes, yeah, and it's also got links to Oscar Wilde, because it was, I'm pretty sure it was ABCD's wife, wasn't it?
Eleanor,
her brother was part of the reason that Oscar Wilde ended up getting imprisoned. She was also linked to the Queensberry rules for boxing.
Yeah, and she had something to do with the English women's football setup, I think.
She did, and she was an explorer and a writer herself in the early 1800s. So, yeah, I mean, it's got some pretty interesting and documented, so it's not just made up facts about it. But if you want to listen to all of them, obviously you can listen to the show Paul and I did on Bosworth earlier in the year.
Now, you do investigate Bosworth on a regular basis, don't you guys? What kind of phenomena do you get when you're there?
I love that word, phenomena. Andy, you want to take over, Andy?
But there's all sorts. I mean, and the good thing about being able to do one location on a number of occasions is that you actually have the opportunity of seeing sometimes a bit of a story unraveling. The hotel gives us various different parts of the building, and we've also had the opportunity of being outside there as well. And there is always something new or different each time, and we always use the gadgets and gizmos, and sometimes they're more successful than others. But there's a couple of rooms that are actually quite intimidating. We get a lot of names coming through, as you kind of expect, and then we've had one which was a sequence of events. We had a local historian with us, and we also had some dowsing rods, and we appeared to have made contact to the spirit of somebody that had been buried alive, and that story kind of unravelled as we were there. It was a fascinating evening, that particular one. We've also had on camera, we've had like black shadows appear in front of a guest in front of a mirror. There's been all sorts, and it's just every time we go, there's something new, and something happens that we kind of just scratch our heads over.
And even when we're not there, even the months that we're not there, the management team will email us and say, we've had a night porter start on his second shift. He saw the grey lady. He never came back for his third shift, that kind of thing. So it's not just the events that we do that we try and generate activity. The guests actually want to move bedrooms because they've seen something in the night. The television's turned on. So it's not just while we're there, it's happening as well.
Now, this is the backdrop to the event that happened on Saturday night. So as you can tell, and if you've seen the photographs of this place, it just looks absolutely stunning as a hotel to go and stay in. Now, you said that you booked some of the haunted hotel rooms. Now, there was a guy there called Jason. Bless him. He doesn't
like them anymore.
He got the short straw, I believe. Tell me about that.
The thing is, rooms 216 and 218 in the past have been quite active. 216 particularly nasty. So when we asked Ruth if we have some haunted rooms, with hindsight, I would have given it Jason 216. But as it happened, he went to check in and said, I believe you've got a room for me. I'm Jason from Haunted Live. And said, I'll just try and find your key. And Jason said those words, if it's room 216, I'm not interested. And apparently the lady just laughed and gave him the key. So I got a message on text saying, you bleep, bleep, bleep. So I said to Andy, Jason's arrived there. I saw the list of the rooms. And with hindsight, I would have given it him, but it was purely coincidental, I swear. But Andy did say that it was obviously destined for that room.
Yeah. He didn't stop talking about it all night. Every time he walked past me, all I could hear.
He loved it.
216. I can't believe I'm in 216.
Yeah, even I saw that post.
The thing was, after the event, we went back to his room for a coffee, and myself, James, and Andy, and there was noises, wasn't there, Andy?
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, we obviously use these little flashy cat ball things, and they were going off of their own accord. We're getting tapped from all over the room. I thought he was actually going to get a bit more of an active night than he did after we left, but it just seemed to peter out for him. But
he did say, though, that he didn't get undressed. And I said to him, why? He said, well, if I want to make a quick getaway, I can run out the door fully clothed. I'm like, come on.
Oh, sorry, that tickled me. Anyway, I'm going to move on from that.
I don't think he did sleep, because wasn't he down for breakfast by 7:30 or something ridiculous? He only lay in the room for about 4.5 hours.
Oh, is that all?
Something like that, yeah.
Oh, bless him. So give me a rundown of the evening. You did a meet and greet, I'm assuming, but when you first all arrived.
Yeah, it was a drinks reception, just to mingle, say hello to people, allow for latecomers, and just have a general chat with people, introduce yourself, that kind of thing. Then we went to the Bosworth suite to have a sit-down buffet, and then we had the screening of obviously Borley Rectory. Before the meal, we had actually had a special message from Rhys Shearsmith, who couldn't actually be at the event. He was on holiday, but he actually filmed something that specifically for us, which was very nice, to be fair. And he signed 40 books for all the guests, so everybody got a signed copy of the book, which was even better. So then we had the Borley film, which blew my mind, to be fair. I've had the DVD a while, and I purposely not watched it because I knew this event was happening. And it's just amazing. People know that I love Harry Price and Borley. But what threw me was the fact that a lot of the activity happened, obviously, before Price got involved. And also the fact that it wasn't there for a lot of the time that activity happened. And it was this chap called V.C. Wall from the Mirror who actually got involved first. So it's really made me think more about Borley and Price's involvement. So then we had a Q&A which Penny's mentioned. And then we overran. The plan was to have 11 o'clock till midnight, a kind of sort of ghost hunt. But that was about half past midnight, I think, before we started that.
It was about 12:30 when the questions and everything finished.
In one room, just calling out, and a kind of discussion. So it was quite nice, to be fair.
Okay, so Rhys Shearsmith, in case you don't know who he is, he was in League of Gentlemen, and he wrote Psychoville as well, which is like a really dark comedy kind of thing, isn't it, really? So he's always had an interest in the paranormal. He's also in the film Borley Rectory that Ashley Thorpe did. So he's very involved in this whole process, just in case guys out there didn't know who Rhys was. So he has that interest himself, doesn't he? So he really sort of like takes these projects and really gets involved with them.
Well, I'm going to mention one word, and the guys can follow on from one of the connections between Ashley and Rhys. Weetabix boxes.
Yeah.
Do you want to take that one for me?
Yeah, I mean, I can do if you want. Basically, Ashley had been doing the Borley Rectory film for a long, long time. He got talking to Rhys, and they both found out that they loved the book, and they both found out that actually in the book that came out in '79, there was a sort of like a cut out section of a haunted house, made it look like Borley, and they both made that model out of Weetabix themselves. So they both have something in common.
Weetabix boxes, not Weetabix.
Boxes, yeah. Not Weetabix, no.
That would have been a whole different story.
Yeah, I'm guessing they ate the Weetabix first, but yeah. So they both made the same thing, obviously 30, 40 years ago, before they met, before they got talking about Borley. So it's just another jigsaw puzzle just fitting, and it's just lovely that, as I said before, all these people from different, that have gone to do so many different things, whether it's film, whether it's TV, whether it's book or magazine or history or whatever, have been fell in love with the same book.
Yeah. Isn't it strange? And it all connects together. It's synchronicities or coincidences, whatever way you want to look at it. Now, Borley Rectory, let's talk about the film. It is an absolutely astonishing piece of work in its own right.
Yes.
Now, Ashley Thorpe is a graphic designer by trade. He went on to design all the sets in a graphic design way and then put real actors onto it. It is not like a film you would see at the cinema. It is literally a piece of artwork. It is, as Andy has just said in the chat room, extraordinary. And a quick shout out to everybody in the chat room. Thank you so much for joining us. I will give you all a shout out before the show ends. Don't you worry. Like I said, it is an absolute piece of work, isn't it, guys?
Yeah, it's awesome.
Yeah.
Seriously.
I'll tell you one of my favourite
stories. A thing of beauty.
It is. I mean, when you realise it was all filmed on green screen and everything was added in, but one of my favourite stories that Ashley told me when I was chatting to him afterwards was because people were asking, well, can we go and visit Borley Rectory? Where is it? And I was like, well, it's not there anymore. It's gone. So he said, has something been happening recently? Because I've been getting lots of sort of people worried that they're going to descend on Borley. And I said, that post is doing the rounds on Facebook again, where the house comes up, and supposedly some guy got so scared there in 1982 that he went mad and ended up being sectioned and all that. And people get really annoyed when you say, well, actually that couldn't have happened because that house is Borley and it didn't exist since like 1938 or whenever it was that it was pulled down. And he said apparently when they released the film, he found out that the parish council at Borley had been told, oh, by the way, there's been a film released about Borley. Just to, there's going to be all the sort of ghost hunters turning up again in their droves looking for the rectory. And what's even worse is that guy, Rhys Shearsmith, is playing one of the lead characters. And he said that I was sure they thought there was going to be some kind of Royston Vasey thing going on because it was and he was getting like threats off people from Borley, like, don't you dare send people over to stomp all over our ground and everything else. And it was this whole sort of, they thought they didn't seem to be able to differentiate Rhys from his Royston Vasey type persona to the fact he's an actor who's doing a job about something he was passionate about. And it just made me laugh that the story is actually mistelling it.
I can't go any further actually on this without actually giving a shout out to a couple of people that I know incredibly well and are amazing guys in their own right, Mr. Paul Adams and Mr. Eddie Brazil, who wrote the Borley Rectory Companion, the complete guide to the most haunted house in England, who actually gave Ashley Thorpe a hell of a lot of help in regards to creating this film that he's created. Now, when Ashley first released it, it basically did the indie trade and the festival circuit, but it's now been released on DVD, hasn't it?
Yeah.
Paul, you've got alien-fied. Paul?
Has he used the transporter?
He has, by the sounds of it.
And
It's like that funk album.
And to take over from that, because Paul's having trouble with his signal at the moment.
Right, where did we get to?
We're talking about Eddie Brazil and
Paul Adams.
Paul Adams, yeah. The fact they helped Ashley out a lot with a lot of the research and everything else.
Yeah, I mean, see, for me, what resonated watching the film wasn't necessarily the actual actions of what was going on in it. It was the creative process about what was on the screen. As you know, I'm the designer of the magazine and everything, so I'm kind of looking at it and I'm breathing and drinking in all of this stuff about Borley Rectory, but at the same time, I'm just looking at how this has been put together as a piece of work. It really reminded me of something like one of the German sort of silent movies of the 20s, like Metropolis, in the way that it was sort of pieced together. The actual cinematography, they're almost animated in the way that it's moving from one scene to each scene. When they light up a cigarette, you can see it's a digital cloud that comes up, but it's done in such a dramatic way that there were parts of this movie that actually gave me goosebumps in the level of creativity that's been put together. It is creepy. I wouldn't say it's out and out scary. It's creepy all the way through with a couple of big jumps. But I was captivated by it. I mean, for parts of it, I think my mouth was probably open at just the level of complexity of what they'd put on the screen. So when that film finished, I was a bit of a fanboy of Ashley Thorpe, to be perfectly honest with you. Absolutely incredible piece of work. And I can't convey enough for people to go out and support this bit of indie cinema. I think the Blu-rays are nearly sold out from what I can gather. If you can grab a copy now, just do it, because it's just a joy.
I will share the links all onto the Parasearch Radio group page tomorrow, guys, for the interview that I did with Ashley Thorpe himself, talking about that creative process, and also the link, hopefully if I can find a link that still has copies for this film. I would severely recommend anybody get this piece of work. It is phenomenal, absolutely phenomenal. I don't know anybody that has seen it that hasn't gone, wow, that is a trip.
And on the Blu-ray, there's 6
you're back.
Yes, I'm back. And on the Blu-ray, there's 6 hours of unseen footage, like extras about the book, actually, that actually we all celebrated on Saturday. But there's 6 hours of extra footage, which is a massive bonus, to be fair.
Well, I can't agree more, because his work is phenomenal. Now, did he give any sneaky peeks about what he's doing next?
Well,
not to me, maybe to Penny, but not to me. Not to me.
No, he didn't tell me. I was trying to get it out of him. The closest I got to him was he's looking for his next project. He likes. I mean, didn't he say he was talking about doing something about Legends of Dartmoor? as his next one, because of the fact he lives down that way.
Yeah, he's from. I think he's spent a lot of childhood in Devon.
Yeah,
and he is doing a kind of film festival in November called Hell Tour, which is based, I believe, in Exeter, and we're involved. We're helping sponsor it, and it's basically because if you look at mainly London and you've got London with a Fright Fest, and you've got Manchester with the Grimfest, and Glasgow. Not many horror festivals go down to the southwest. So Ashley's trying to start this up from scratch. He's got people like Mark Gatiss there, and Anna's there as well. Dominic Brunt, Paddy Dingle from Emmerdale. So he's just trying to create his own film festival down that neck of the woods where, as a kid, he was brought up. I think it's a great idea, to be fair.
It is a great idea. Now, Borley captures the imagination of quite a few people in the field, and I think the reason for that is the enigma of it, isn't it? It's that it's not there anymore. It's a tiny village. You literally it takes 2 seconds to drive through. You've got
you blink and you miss it. Yeah,
you do. Yeah, you've got the churchyard. Now, work is still being done on that. Believe it or not, I know there's work being. I can't really talk about it, but I know that there is still work being done on it from somebody completely different. So I'm looking forward to hearing the research and the outcome of that particular project. And guys, as soon as I know, you guys will know. You know me on that one. So we will see on Borley Rectory. Have you guys been to Borley?
No, I've not been at all. But can you imagine the fact that if it was still standing, it would be the most visited place in the UK, wouldn't it? Let's be honest, for the paranormal world. But no, it's something that's been on my list for ages. And I say I love Harry Price, love Borley, but I think it's because it's not there anymore. I've never been, never gone. But I would love to. I would love to go.
I'm going to play devil's advocate here. Do you think it would still be as famous as it was if it hadn't been pulled down?
Yeah.
Yeah, I still think it would. Yeah,
I do.
Yeah, I do because of the Harry Price connection.
More history.
Yeah, because of the Harry Price connection, because of the of all the books that have been published about it, and that book that you mentioned, Kerry, Paul Adams and the other guy,
Eddie Brazil.
It's an amazing book, an amazing book, an absolutely brilliant book.
Mm-hmm. It is one I would definitely suggest anybody who's got even a vague interest in Borley Rectory to go and get. And I've been lucky enough because I know, as I said earlier, I know the guys really well, and Eddie has actually got some artefacts from the original Borley Rectory that I've had a feel of. I know, right? I know. He's brilliant, absolutely brilliant. Anyway, back to your night, guys. So tell me some of the people that were there, because you literally had a plethora of people from the paranormal field there, didn't you?
We did. We had Kieran O'Keefe, who I'm sure we all know. We had Phil and Sarah Wyman. We had Hazel Ford from Haunted Happenings. We had this historian person called Penny. I'm not quite sure what her surname was.
Who gets asked a question about history and can't even answer it. Yeah, that one.
Oh, you did pretty damn well, my lovely. You did pretty damn well.
You know, we had Neil Packer and Jane from Haunted Antiques.
Can I just make a point about Neil? Because he dared me not to say this. So I've got to say, he begged me not to say. If you ever go out for dinner with Neil Packer, don't let him have an open cup to drink from. Give him one of those kids' sippy cups that don't leak if he knocks them over.
Is he a spiller, is he?
He sent his full glass of water flying over the table.
Oh, jeez.
And I told him, he said, "You're going to mention that on Monday, aren't you?" And I went, "Of course I am." He went, "Please don't." I went, "I can't not, Neil. You know, it's so get him a sippy cup next time you see him."
I mean, we could have filled it with so many more guests, but when we approached Usborne, we said, "Look, it's only fair that you invite some contacts from your world as well, like Edward Parnell, and obviously Ash, and had to be there. And there was some children's authors, some Usborne, some publicists. So it was a really good marriage of two sort of like sectors of the paranormal coming together. It was just a great night. And I mean, Edward Parnell has wrote a fantastic book. And it's just amazing to see that there is another world of the paranormal that's outside your world, if that makes sense.
Definitely. I just want to give a shout out to the chat room at this point. So I want to say good evening. And we've got Richard, Paul in there. By the way, Paul, good idea for Neil's Christmas present, a Parasearch Radio sippy cup. Joanne Treeherne is in there. Karen Frey is in there. She does some amazing events in her own right. Supernatural Fair, go check those out. We've got Liam, because I never get his surname right.
Kupkovic, you know it?
There we go, Kupkovic. There we go, that's that one. We've got so many people in there, so thank you so much for joining us. Everybody I've seen on the socials said what an amazing night it was, and they would like more events like that coming up. Now, we've just talked about this weird, strange author girl that you had there. Would you be doing a weird book launch for her by any chance at some point in the future?
Well, we've talked about it in the past. I mean, you know, and it's something that we'd love to do. I mean, there are so many great people in the paranormal who write great stuff, you know, and Penny's book is awesome. So, and
which Andy did the cover for. Can I just point out?
Exactly.
Andy did the cover. Yes.
And sometimes, even though social media is great for free marketing, sometimes something a little bit fun, a little bit different could go a long way. So we've talked about in the past, Penny knows about having a launch, and it's something we would still be interested in. So there's so many people out there who don't get enough publicity. Some people do, but some people don't. And I think it's about time that, you know, the paranormal spread far and wide. There's so many great people out there who deserve mentioning a lot more than they get.
Oh, pleasure.
That is one thing Haunted Magazine does seem to do. It seems to bring everybody under one banner and starts working and networking with people and bringing people together in a way that doesn't, you know, that I'm starting to see happen more and more now through the field. That's an incredibly positive thing in the field, when the field can sometimes see an incredibly negative place. Paul, in your perspective, do you think it's getting better?
I think it is. I think people are realising that, you know, you don't have to be the best of mates to get on and do something together. You don't have to see each other every month or have meetings. You can do things on messaging now. You can talk and you can become good friends that way. I mean, a lot of people we met on Saturday, we are now chatting via DMs, and it's the first time we'd met, but there's a common connection, the paranormal. You know, nobody is saying we're the big I am. You know, this is us, look at us. We're all doing our own unique thing, but by working together, I'm sure we can spread the word that there's so many great, as I mentioned before, like Penny's book. I mean, Penny sells it on Amazon, I'm sure, but, you know, a little bit more publicity will not go amiss, to be fair.
I totally agree with that. Now, Andy, you also write music, don't you?
I do.
And that is another way of bringing people together. It's music, imagery, writing, all together in one banner. Do you have any plans to release more music soon?
Yes.
Sorry, I do.
Was that just a yes, end of conversation?
Yes. Well, to be fair, I've got a number of projects on the go. I've got a book that I've been... it's been a 5-year project, really, called 72 Minutes in the Woods. It's just had some love and attention from an editor. So I'm now going to package it off.
Lucy did it, didn't she? Miss Lucy?
She did. Yes, Lucy Wilgrass, who's a superbly talented writer in her own right. I mean, the article in issue 24 is one of my favourites recently. So when we kind of got chatting on one of the ghost hunts, and I think it's difficult because this is a book that started life 4 years or so ago as a project that was really kind of knocking back and forth ideas with my son. And then a year of writing and several different writes. And I suppose there's a confidence element of actually getting this book to be read. But once I've actually put it in the hands of people, I'm starting to get some lovely feedback. That there's engaging characters, there's an element of supernatural about it, there's an element of fantasy about it, and a couple of smidges of horror in there as well, all aimed at a more young adult audience. So now that Lucy's done this work for me and edited it and tell me where to tweak it here and there, I feel a lot more confident about getting this book to see the light of day. Amazon CreateSpace is also a fantastic way of releasing material yourself. Now, at the time of first initially writing this, it started out as music. So there's material that could actually work hand in hand with what I've written on the page. So you've got a complete sort of experience that this could be. So yeah, keep your eyes out on social media for that. 72 Minutes in the Woods is the name of the book. And a second album that I've got coming up will be soon. That's all I can say really, because I've got some artwork that's being developed for that as well. 9 tracks. It's called The Haunted Guy, which is what I write under. Snappy title, didn't really want to do much more than that this time around. I just wanted to kind of put myself out there as this is what I want to do and what I want to share as a whole experience. Each time I write music, it's about writing a story and kind of trying to conjure up images in your mind as to what I'm actually trying to do for you. So yeah, that's probably a very wordy answer. But yes, I've got a lot of projects on, and also issue 25 of the magazine, which will be started imminently.
Awesome. Now, Penny, the author, enter the room. You've already released My Haunted Histories. That was at the beginning of the year. I know you're hot on the press for your next book. Tell us a little bit about that, and when can we expect a release date? Well,
the next one's called My Haunted Experiment, or My Haunted Experiments. I haven't decided yet whether there's an S in there or not. And it's looking at 4 different sort of theories or experiments that are used in the paranormal world and trying to dig into their background and their history, and then using them in 3 different locations. And of course, I've written history of each location as well, and then write up what things I've sort of found by doing these experiments, and also other people's experiences of these locations, if there are any. I mean, one of the locations has never been investigated before, ever. And I'm just very lucky that I'm not going to tell people what it is, but I'm just very, very lucky that it's not what you know, it's who you know. And I know the person who could get me in there. So probably I'm hoping once I've got, because I was supposed to be doing the investigation there in a couple of weeks, but with my ankle the way it is, I've had to postpone it.
Yeah, we're calling you Hop Along at the moment.
Hop Along, yeah, that's what they were all calling me on Saturday, don't worry. So, I mean, when the photo you've got of me with the Wymans, they actually told me to stand in between them so they could hold me up. I mean, that's the kind of camaraderie you get at these paranormal events. And when I took a beer, someone said, "Are you sure you're allowed to drink beer while you're on crutches?" I was like, "I'm pretty sure I checked with the police. It's fine, yes." It stopped the pain, if anything, it anaesthetised it. So I'm hoping to have the first draft finished probably by the end of November, ready to start being edited. Obviously, because it's an immediate thing with the Amazon publishing, as soon as I get the edit back and I've got my cover designed by my wonderful designer, once I give him the idea of what I want, I'm hoping early new year again. But then I'm also working on book 3 at the moment, which is going to be a little bit shorter, so that might be following a couple of months afterwards. Because I'm kind of working on that while I'm at an impasse with this one, because I'm waiting to do this last investigation. So, and I can't just sit and not do anything. So I'm working on number 3 at the same time. and writing new articles for Haunted Magazine, and researching new shows for Parasearch, and writing blogs for Parasearch. I don't, you know.
Oh, I was just going to say that. I was just going to say, if you're hankering for a fix of Penny's work, then you can go over to parasearch.org and check out some of her blogs that she's written for Parasearch Radio or Haunted Magazine to read some of the articles she's written for those guys too. So Halloween is fast approaching. What do you guys have planned for Halloween?
We're back at Bosworth, funny enough. We are doing an event at Bosworth Hall. It's our 3rd Halloween event there. We started in 2017. And, obviously it's suggested that it's the night when the veil between the living and the not so living is at its thinnest. So there's a good chance that we may get more contact than another night. But yeah, we've run at Halloween events this is our 3rd one at Bos, and it's just, the guests come back and we love it and they love it, and we'll get some new areas, I'm sure, some suites and in the rooms and that kind of thing. And it's just a great night.
Is it a public event?
Yeah. It's on.
There's still tickets available.
Yeah, there's still tickets available.
Tickets still available?
Yeah, there's a few left. Haunted Live official website or Facebook or Twitter, they have their posts on there. So if you want to come down, if you're not doing anything on Halloween night, please, if you're interested and you're local or you want to come, just please let us know. But yeah, it's a great night. Whatever, whether it's 10 guests, 15 guests, or 20 guests. We run it and we love it, and we have a laugh, we have fun. We always make it relaxed. Plenty of nice food as well.
I can recommend the breakfast buffet in the morning. Yes.
It is good, I must admit. But no, the events are normally 7 till midnight, and it's just great. I mean, Andy will concur, as he mentioned before, that we always get different areas. Sometimes we don't even know what areas we're getting until we arrive. So which is quite nice, because sometimes it can be nice to get thinking you've got like an area that you know and love, but something completely brand new. And we'd like to do different things as we did last time. We love it. We love public events. It's a way of meeting new people. And as I put in the chat room about Lucy, she came to one of our events, and that's how we met. So it just shows you that it's not sometimes connecting with people who are, writers or whatever. She came on in a public event. We got chatting. We all became friends. And now she writes for us, and she's an author in her own right too.
She was telling me actually about her second book that's coming out, the one she's working on, and we're actually going to be doing a show on it next year because it sounds so interesting.
Mm-hmm.
So, guys, I will share again the link for that event if you're interested in that one into the Parasearch Radio group page tomorrow for you. Or if I get time later on tonight, because you never know what time I'm going to go to bed. And so if you want a ticket for that, there are still tickets available if you are at a loose end on Halloween evening. And it is fast approaching, isn't it?
10 days, yeah.
10 days. Ooh. That's when all the spooks come out. On that note, we've actually come to the end of the show, guys.
Seriously? Wow, that's gone fast.
We're actually running over a little bit, but that's all right.
Can we just say, on behalf of the magazine... On behalf of Haunted Magazine and Haunted Live, thank you so much for Parasearch existing, and have a great... I can't believe it's 3 years. That's weird. But have a lovely birthday celebration, whatever you're doing after this. But 3 years, I'm sure you've seen many changes over the last 3 years, but, it's great to have a station and a network like this that does so many different things. So, as much as you applaud us, we, myself and Andy, rest of the guys, applaud you guys too.
Oh,
what he said.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm getting a bit mosh.
She's going to cry. She's going to cry in a minute.
It is Parasearch Radio's 3rd birthday today. And we are probably celebrating more next Monday, actually. I think we've had to postpone it because I wanted to cover the Usborne book launch with you guys tonight, because that was so relevant and such an amazing event. So thank you so much. On that note, we have actually come to the end of the show. If you don't know Haunted Magazine, go check out their pages on Facebook. Don't forget to buy it. It is a phenomenal piece of work every single month. If you don't listen to my Penny show, then make sure you do. She goes live at 9 p.m. on a Wednesday, Haunted Histories. You get to know all the history of the location and the hauntings that go on behind it. Connecting the history with the hauntings is a fantastic concept, and she smashes it out of the ballpark every single week. And on that note, we bid you a very farewell and a very good night. Good night, guys.
Happy birthday to you.
I'm going to play the jingle.
Thank you for listening.
Bye, guys.
Don't forget to join us for more shows throughout the week. Find us on Facebook, Twitter, and the World Wide Web to keep up to date with all the shows right here on Parasearch Radio.